Hi, this is Russ from Yum DM, and I'm here to I'm having a bit of a deja vu because I did this yesterday around the same time. It is a video for a bit of a review and walkthrough and what I like about Beneath the Sunken Catacombs, which is a OSR role-playing game. Yes, another one. But this one's, I think, is worth your time. This was suggested to me by someone who I follow on Instagram, and his little write-up about it sort of sold me straight away. So I went and purchased it. I think it's only about $4 as well for the PDF. And as soon as I started reading it, I was thinking this is the sort of the game that I would write if I was going to write one, I think. Um, there's a lot of it's definitely OSR. It's definitely an OSR game, meaning that it has the old school principles, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it also has a few modern rules. The modern rules, I feel like he's taken from third edition, but it could be just fifth edition because fifth edition took a lot from third edition and sort of changed it a little bit. But I do see scatterings, and I'll sort of point them out, but I do see scatterings of third edition throughout this book, um, which really captured my attention as well. So as I'm a big sort of fan of 3E as well as the sort of the old school stuff. So let's jump in. First up, the artwork on the cover is amazing. The It was written by Paul Bantock, and I believe the art was by his wife, Marissa Smith. And the art throughout is just amazing. As you'll see, I mean, he's a great example of it, and it just captures the feel of the game. And I'm a big proponent of the art needs to capture the game and the feel of the game. And it's a big signal to those who are looking at purchasing the book what the book is about. And so it just nails the feel of this game perfectly. Um, it goes into what is RPG, and then it goes into what is an OSR. And the tenets they sort of put on this is for me something pretty cool because it talks about it's not a game of heroes. The game doesn't owe you anything. It's player driven fun, and you got to embrace the fate, meaning the dice rolls will dictate success or failure. And again, amazing artwork here with the Wizard in the Night. Um, and those concepts really resonate with me. And I think to the heart of the OSR movement. There's a lot of just character creation and attributes. All of it's pretty much the same as you would be used to. A lot of it's quite simplified. There's only sort of a short paragraph on each. Um, you have the three alignments, chaotic, neutral, and lawful. Attributes are all the same. You'd be familiar with it. Um, the other statistics are all the same as well. Hit dice, hit points, attack, all that. That he hasn't bothered to change the names of these things, which I think is a trap that OSR games fall into. They try and, jimmy with the names just to make it sound a bit different. But to be honest, um, it just ends up being the same thing as well. The only thing that doesn't jive with me generally in OSR games is species as class or race as class. Um, and but in this game, actually, I don't mind it, and there's a reason for that, and I'll cover that in a minute. Um, there's also a little chapter on player responsibility, which I really like, and also just talking about how players need to show up prepared for the game, um, which I think is something that gets forgotten in a lot of role-playing games. And they've got, roles that each party member can take if they want, each player can take. Now, the classes, this is where he did change the names a little bit. The warrior is the fighter, the sorcerer is the magic user or the wizard. Um, I probably would have stuck to fighter and magic user, but you can call them whatever you want. It's still the same thing. The great thing about classes, and I think this is one of the huge strengths of the game, at least for me, is that you have a base class, They only go to level 10, which is fine with me because I think by level 10, characters are ready to retire anyway. Um, you get certain traits like natural toughness, you roll twice and take the highest for hit dice. You can kick indoors, you get a bonus on damage. You can wield two weapons, and your attacks go up as you level up. Excuse me. Um, but you can get variants for each race. So there's four warrior variants in the game: Crusader, Barbarian, Brigand, and Swashbuckler. And all they are really is just swapping out one trait for another. So, for example, the Barbarian can't wear any armor heavier than chainmail, whereas the normal regular fighter or warrior can use any weapon or use any armor or shields. But instead, barbarians gain a +1 attack or damage roll when they fall below half their starting hit points. And then the swashbuckler is, as you would imagine, they can only wear leather. But if providing they have a dex of 15 plus, they have +1 to damage rolls with one-handed weapons and may use the thief's acrobatic ability. So each class basically has five versions of it, which and it's done in such a simple way that it's not burdening when you create a character. You go, oh, I want a warrior, but I might take a crusader instead. And it's just a matter of writing down a couple of extra traits. Or not even a couple of, it's just picking out the traits that you actually have. And he does this for each one. The sorcerer again is like the wizard or the magic user. Spells go up to fifth level. And then you have the sorcerer magic user variant, sword mage, esoteric archer, eldritch wanderer, and elven sage, which is obviously an elf. The priest is basically the cleric. And again, you have the war priest, sanctified druid. So that's how you become a druid. It's a sort of offshoot of cleric and monastic scholar. Again, look at this artwork, man. That dude's cool. Um, and again, you have the same, the thief, the backstab. Acrobatics is a new one. Provided they're unencumbered, a thief can evade enemies in combat, ignoring attacks of opportunity while moving at their full movement speed. And this is where 3E, 5E sort of come in, where he's got limited attacks of opportunity, which I like. And again, with the thievery, the thieves can hide in shadows, open locks, pickpockets, move silently, scale sheer surface, disarm traps, right? But it's all under the thievery skill. I think White Box does this as well. They just have one skill level. In one of my zines, I can't remember which issue it is, but it's the OSR issue. I think it might be in the teens somewhere. I actually have rules to add points to the thief so that these become not all the same. So you could easily use that in this system, and it's all D6 based. Again, thief variant. So if you could want a thug character instead, or a sharpshooter, or a woodland scout. Woodland scout really spoke to me. I thought that was pretty cool. You don't get the pickpockets, open locks, or disarm traps. Instead, they may use it to track creatures, calm wild beasts, and forage for food in the wild, which is very cool. And this is where the race as class comes into it. And again, the reason I don't mind it so much in this game is because you have the variants. So you can take a regular dwarf if you want to, or you can take a highborn warrior, a tunnel runner, a dwarven berserker, or a stone priest. So they don't have to be just a dwarf, which I like. The good thing about this too is that I don't know if there's any third-party material for this at the moment, but it would be so easy to create extra variants for these classes. And I'll be surprised if someone hasn't done that already. This is where I sort of disagree with the adage for this. The Lizard King, he's basically put lizard creatures in as playable PCs. I don't like monsters as PCs, but that's just a personal taste. Your mileage may vary, but it's there if you want it. And then you got the elf. The elves are pretty cool. They're sort of weird and magical. And then you get the Elven Ranger, Elven Priest, Blade Dancer, which is a class that came out of 30, I believe, Elven Knight. And you got the Halfling. Halflings are pretty cool. They have some thievery skills. And then you can do Field Warden, County Watch, Forest Folk, and that's how you get the gnomes in this. I don't know why Rock Gnome is under halfling because they say they share a language and culture with dwarves. So I sort of figure it should have been under dwarves, but this is how you become a gnome. And then you got the warlock as well. I know some people are probably rolling their eyes, but the warlocks are pretty cool. And they do have this thing where they call, and it's same with the lizard folk as well. They have an hindrance called the Outlander. Um, so they have appearance difficult to disguise. They struggle to blend in with civilized folk, and the Outlanders pay twice the normal cost of upkeep during downtime, which is a pretty cool way of allowing the GM to put limits on what warlocks and lizard folk and those races that aren't civilized, um, the difficulties they would have in a civilized society when they go into towns and stuff. And they might get to the point where they just don't want to go into town, which is to me is much more realistic. Um, yeah, so you can become variants of those as well. There's also a part on making zero level characters, which is really cool. And this would be really good for two reasons. One is if you want to put the characters through a meat grinder to start them off at first level, or just for NPCs for the GM, just figuring out what an NPC is and the stats are there straight away. And then advancing from heroes, goods and services are all the same. The one thing I really liked about this is they use the silver standard, um, which is much more realistic again. And they have a decent selection of weapons and armor. It's pretty basic. It's very similar to OSE in that respect. So there's not a huge selection, but again, you can add to them and bring port stuff in from other games. All my zines, so I have a weapon. For quite a few zines early on, I have weapon spotlights for various weapons, so you could use those rules as well. Um, yeah, I have uh, uncommon weapons armor, so basically uncommon materials like silver, fine quality. This is another 3E one where you get if the weapon's been made quite well, you get a +1 bonus to your attack rolls. Excuse me again. Um, And you've got prices for services and upkeep and all that sort of stuff, so which I think is really good. Um, because it's a simple table. There's no sort of toing and froing. It's just, okay, you want a decent upkeep, 20 silver pieces, you know, per month. Oh, sorry, weekly. And then if you would sort of role playing it out, then you could say, okay, I stay at the inn overnight. It costs 10 copper. Um, They've got mounted combat here too. Again, very simple. Again, you could expand on it if you wanted to, but it's just there if you need it. Um, and then playing the game, they've got obviously rules of the game, dungeon exploration. They sort of lay out the thief skills, light sources, all the sort of stuff that you would expect, overland travel, combat. I won't sort of really go into this other than just pointing out I love these area effects. They just make it so easy and simple just to see where the area effect is. And I love the thrown flask miss table. That's awesome. And it gives you some ideas for creative combat, um, death and damage, attribute tests, and a bit about campaigns, leveling up, hiring henchmen, and some simple tables there for loyalty. They've go into downtime activities, and one I really like in this is establishing a rapport. A character may spend time establishing a rapport with their hirelings. This grants a +2 bonus on all hireling loyalty rolls for the week. Excuse me. So that's really a good addition there. I think that I could see some of my characters doing that quite consistently, especially if you have a low charisma. Although maybe you might want to put a minimum charisma on that to be able to do that. Um, and then you go into obviously sorceries and spellcasting. The one good thing about this is that sorcerers or magic users can um, add power to their spells by using up an additional slot. And what this does is in the spell description itself. So, for example, alarm, it extends the zone to 60 feet instead of 30 feet and extends the duration from 8 hours to 12 hours. Light, for example, um, is the same brightness as a torch. If it's overcharged, as they call it, extends out 60 feet and illuminates as bright as daylight. So there's ways you can increase the power of spells very quickly and very easily. Um, the one thing I sort of did mention about the warlock is the warlock needs to roll to cast their spells, and if they roll five or above, they overcharge the spell. So that's another way that they can overcharge. The spells are very familiar to those who know D&D, all very much the same. Then they go into pre-spells, exactly the same sort of thing. It would be very familiar to everybody. The one thing I really like, and this is from third edition as well, is they have arcane schools. So what you do is you specialize in a particular type of magic, say abjuration or conjuration or divination, and you're blocked from having certain spells, but you gain access to a whole new lot of spells. So, um, and then they go into say school of abjuration. So you're forbidden from casting these spells here, but you gain access to these spells here. So, although I just realized a mistake here, they got conjurer spells instead of abjuration spells. Oh, that's a bit of a typo. Oh well. That would be abjurer spells. So, then they go through each spell school, and they all have divine paths, which is another 3E creation where they again you have replacement spells. So they only have three. Again, this is where third party stuff can just expand this rapidly. So they have the path of light, path of shadow, and the path of the wild. So that would be sort of your druid stuff as well. But yeah, again, you could create your own. Then they have the Bestiary. Again, it's all fairly familiar. A lot of familiar monsters. They have a list of special abilities for monsters, and the artwork's pretty cool. But I love when they do the monsters instead of they had sort of adjectives added to the name. So instead of just vermin, it's skittering vermin. And instead of cultists, it's twisted cultists, and wriggling wretches and stuff. That it just adds a little bit of flavor there. But also, there's all different types with each of the monsters too. So, for example, a twisted cultist might have mutating flesh, or it might have gore encrusted leathers with throwing knives and hatchets. So that's kind of cool. So you can have a bit of variety to your monsters. Again, this artwork is just phenomenal. I love it. Um, so look at this dude here, ginormous drakes. So yeah, I won't go through everything there, but they also talk about hirelings from foreign lands, so elven henchmen, dwarven henchmen, halfling henchmen, lizard folk. They also give just quick stats for riding beasts, which is really handy and nothing too weird in there. Then they go into treasure, obviously. They talk about scrolls, magic items. Again, it's all fairly familiar. But they have a big section on cursed items, which is definitely underused by GMs. So I'm really happy they included that as a different chapter. You can craft different items, and then they got a whole section on game mastering, being prepared, improvisation, world building, dungeon design, and they've got a quick little some rules on assembling dungeons and dungeon rooms, trap design, encounter design. So it's all really good information, and I really dig the simple character sheet as well with a cool little picture there. And then that's it. And they've got some tables, quick reference tables at the end. Um, Overall, I really recommend this book for $4 or whatever it is. It's just a no-brainer for me. And the strengths, I think, are the character generation. It's quick, but there's some variety there. And I just feel like they've laid out the rules really well. So high recommendation from me for Beneath the Sunken Catacombs. But this is Russ from YumDM signing off. And as always, happy gaming.